folks, it looks like it's 5:30. Not our usual time to begin, but we will. Tonight's meeting, this call to order the February 16th Wenham Select Board meeting at 5:30 p.m. We're doing this at this time because we're being followed. This meeting will be followed by a joint Finance Select Board meeting in preparation for annual town meeting. So we have a lot to cover in this hour, but we will just go through it as efficiently as we can. And we'll start with public input as we always do. I didn't, oh, wait, see, don't let me skip anything important though. So this meeting is being recorded. It is a virtual Zoom meeting. We will take all votes by roll call, and we should probably announce our attendance verbally. So Catherine Harrison here.
Jerry Cheeseman here.
Diane Bucco here.
Okay, so our board is here. We have our town administrator, our recording secretary is here. We're ready to go, I hope. So now we're ready to start with public input, as we always do, and we will continue. If there is anyone in the audience, viewing public, who is interested in making a comment or ask a question for items that are not on the agenda, I would ask that you put your name in the chat or use the raise hand function, and we will allow you a minute or two to make any comments you wish. Anybody see anything in the chat?
I do not.
I do not either. Okay, so we're going to move along. We have just really not just maybe one announcement for tonight. And Tom, if you don't mind, will you do the announcements for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The lone announcement this evening is that the Wenham Select Board is looking for volunteers who would like to participate on a town administrative screening committee, also known as the Committee to Send Tom Younger Home. But basically, this group will be responsible for matching candidates to criteria set by the Select Board, with a goal of recommending the finalists who will be interviewed for selection by the Select Board. This actually is a very important committee that will help shape the future of our community for the TA who will be working with the Select Board in the upcoming future. If you or someone you know is interested, please email townadministrator@wenhamma.gov on or before February 22nd. CTA search on the homepage of the website for more information. You email us, we'll immediately send you a response of acknowledgement of the of your requests. So thank you very much.
Thanks. And I think we're moving into reports, and you're still up, Tom, if you have a report for us tonight.
I will actually give you a small update because I know we are going into the FinCom meeting shortly there, but this will be basically financial. As the board has seen in the past week, and what I have done with our department heads is I have requested if there's any items that you wish to have submitted to the House budget as an outside section. Those are generally major items such as roadway repair, IT work, such as that. And I've asked our department heads and the Select Board if there's any ideas that they would like to submit on our outside budget. I don't think we've done that for a while, and it's something that I'm very interested in. There is money out there, and you don't know if you'll get it unless you ask. So I'm looking forward to seeing what our department heads to submit. A couple of them have already submitted them, and they were small dollar items, but we may have to move them up a little bit to put them a little bit of importance on the House budget, but we will be submitting. What I hope to have, if some of those items fall out of the House budget, whoever will be sitting in the seat when the Senate budget is filed, is that they work with Senator Tarr's office also on filing items for the outside sections of the Senate budget. I think it's rather important that we do that. Next, when we're speaking of money, and I appreciate our new DPW director, Mr. Souza. There's money out there for bridge repair work. small bridge repair work in town. Mr. Souza has identified possibly 2 bridges that may be eligible in our community for bridge money. And he's looking a little more into that. And if they are eligible, Rich and I will be filing applications for funding for those 2 bridges. And the 2 bridges, and you're much more familiar with them than I am, is a bridge over Miles River, a small one. And we have a bridge on Dodges Road over the Wenham Reservoir. I don't know if those ring a memory on that one. Those are the 2 that he saw that we might be eligible for. But as we go, they have to be under 20 feet. So it has to be a span of 10 to 20 feet. And those are the bridges that we're looking at, though we thought the Dodgers Road did not look too bad as far as the condition of that bridge. Well, if there's money out there, we're going to be applying for it going forward. And last, we did receive a petitioned article for the town meeting warrant. The board may be aware of that. It's certified signatures on it regarding a rezoning in an area of town for food trucks. But that is the only petitioned article that we have received at this point.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I think that's a short report. We'll have more at the next meeting, but I know the FinCom is rather important to be to tonight.
Right. I think the new DPW guy knows more about town bridges than I do. I'm going to now have to drive out Dodges Row and look for where there's a bridge. Anyway, I just have one update. Is fairly brief but important. So we've talked about the fact that we have a regional public health consortium and nurse, and it's Rachel Lee, and she has let us know through our public health nurse, Mary Beth Ting, that they required for distribution in Wenham COVID-19 rapid antigen test kits and a supply of KN95 masks, which can be distributed to the public. So this is just an announcement to say that those are here or coming very shortly, available to us. But I've asked Tom to coordinate this activity because already lots of departments and groups in town are saying, oh, we'd like these, or we can distribute them from here. And it's a little fragmented. So I think it'd be great if Tom would put together a, sort of a plan, a little bit of a cohesive plan, and, get a little working group together to decide where these are best used. To that end, I think it'd be great if there was a select board member on this working group to understand and perhaps update the select board eventually on what these, where these are going and how they're being distributed. So we don't have to decide tonight, but if you are interested in sitting on this working group that will be, fairly short term, I believe they'll be available for distribution in the next week or so. But it'd be nice to have an idea of where they're going or where we think they should best go and how they're going to be distributed. So let Tom know, Gary or Diane, if you might be interested in being on that small working group. And thank you, Tom, for coordinating it. So that's all I have for tonight. Gary or Diane, do you have anything that you wish to bring up tonight?
I do not.
Not here.
No? Okay. So moving right along then. We have a consent agenda. And so we'll take a motion for that.
I move to approve the Wenham Select Board meeting open session minutes from February 1st, 2022.
Second,
Okay, all in favor? Gary,
yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Catherine, yes. Thank you, as always, Catherine Tinsley, for those minutes. Okay, let's see. Now we get into the sort of meat of this meeting. So the Board of Health met last week and had a discussion of a few things and took a few votes that we need to, I guess, confirm or they're actually recommendations to us. And so I've put a little background on these slides. But so as far as the Board of Health meeting, there was an update on the mask mandate. That was part of their discussion. The Board of Health voted 2-1-0 by roll call. You can see I borrowed these words from our recording secretary to recommend to the select board to discontinue the mandate for masking in indoor public places. Regina Baker voted in the negative. I think the 3 select board members happen to be listening, so we all know what the discussion was. But and the present mandate, the one that we're under, was effective January 13th. It is presently scheduled to go through March 31st, and it requires face coverings or masks in all indoor public facilities, including food establishments. This says the mandate will be revisited in March. I guess we're revisiting it a little bit early, but our job for tonight, and if you could go to the next slide, I tried to put some options in here. So these are kind of, we'll have a discussion, but these are, I think, are kind of our choices. That the motion the Board of Health made or the recommendation did not have a date on it. So we have the option of removing the mask mandate in all public places with a date, removing the mask mandate in all public buildings except municipal buildings, or keep the mandate in place as written. Again, we need a date. And there may be other motions, but I thought I'd kick off the discussion with just a few of what I think may be the options. So anyone have any comments or discussion on what they think we should do as far as the mask mandate goes?
I have a question or so.
Sure.
So my question is, have we spoken to, Tom, have we spoken to the staff in town hall or the library about their thoughts on this?
I have not.
I forgot to myself.
When we first did this mandate, folks were, the original mandate, that the discussion I remember having were that folks were most concerned about the public, coming in and out, not so much their mask mandates in their own offices. But I actually did not ask them about this. Tom, did you have any discussion at all, or did anyone give you any input on masks?
No, we haven't had any discussions on that, sorry.
Okay. So and even the Board of Health conversation was, not strongly, not strong one way or another, a little bit of a mixed vote. So I think it's sort of up to us.
So my gut would say if we remove the mask mandate, any business in town or any church or whatever can make their own decisions. So they're not mandated to have a mask, but they could request in their place of business. Is that correct?
I believe it is.
Okay.
Although
So
I
my
don't
thought
know
would
that
be, go ahead.
I was just gonna say they would have to enforce it themselves. So in other words,
Right.
Right.
So, but they
Yeah.
could if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So my
Yeah.
gut would say to remove the mask mandate, but I would recommend, I think, in the municipal buildings, primarily for the health and safety of our staff, having a small group, almost a one-person office. If someone happens to get sick, then we're really shorthanded. And so to maintain their safety, I think it's best to keep it in the municipal buildings. But yet I never really asked the staff, which I should have done.
Gary?
Well, I think timing wise, I believe the schools are going to start the mask on 28 February by the governor's directive for DESE. So I should think we'd consider aligning any decision with that date, knowing that when we implemented this mask mandate, it took us a few days to get the word out to all the businesses. So likewise, I think that we have to allow some administrative time as far as the date. So I'm thinking, let's line ourselves up with the 28th of February. And likewise, I think we should coordinate with the staff first, but Otherwise, I think we can do away with the mask in the other public buildings and businesses. If you look at the newspapers, PBD just did it, and other towns around here clearly dropping the mandate.
Okay. So I do like the notion of the 28th. And we will have to talk about the staff and how we want to handle that. I know we've all seen towns all around us removing their mask mandates and saying, well, you can always wear them. But when I look at the data in Wenham, it's definitely coming down. It's definitely coming down, but it's not in any way, shape, or form level. So giving it at least another couple of weeks, hopefully the curve not only continues to come down, but levels off at something near where we were, 6 or 8 months ago. So I guess we're saying for sure, as of the 28th, maybe we're saying we could remove the mandate in public buildings, but maybe we should just double check on that for what our municipal employees would like to see. I mean, they always have an option to put them on if they'd like to. So it's just a matter of whether we want to mandate that everyone who comes into a public building, including the employees, wear masks.
So essentially, the data that the Board of Health worked on, as they said, it's always a little bit behind time. So we don't really have direct information for today. So we're kind of forecasting to the future. So I think another just a little over a week or so to the 28th of February. And in the meantime, we can sort things out and, talk to the staff, see how they're comfortable and whether we use, the clear barriers that we have in place or a mask. I think we can coordinate with the employees and then make a final decision on the municipal buildings, perhaps on the 22nd.
Okay. So what, I think I'm hearing us say that we would remove, again, effective the 28th, but remove the mask mandate in all public buildings, effective the 28th, or, so what's the motion?
I think the motion is to remove them on the 28th, but we need to, before that final vote, need to coordinate with the employees so that we know that as far as the municipal buildings, we're comfortable in doing everything at once on the 28th.
Okay, so we're leaving this as is in place, not acting on the recommendation of the select board until our next meeting. And then we'll have hopefully all the information we need to take a vote on all the buildings, all the types of buildings. Is that what I'm hearing?
Is that correct? The schools are dropping the mandate on the 28th?
Well, I can't be completely sure. I know the state DESE has said the 28th, but as always, I think they leave there's this local option. So I think if the school district decided it wanted to stay longer, keep the mask mandate on longer, they could, but they have been following the DESE guidelines. So I don't know.
Right.
I'm not sure. I think it has to do with testing, and I'm not actually up to date on that. But we can also make a note to find that out by next week. Tom.
Yes. The one challenge that we have, if the board decides to extend the mask mandate in public buildings for a little longer, if Hamilton has dropped it, the library is actually technically in Hamilton, so we're the lead community, for Wenham, for the library. So that building would be literally somewhat in a conundrum about what to do.
I'm sorry. So I know Hamilton the library's in Hamilton. Hamilton dropped their mandate, their mask mandate already.
Right.
So.
But we're the lead community for.
So the library is kind of up and down? I mean, they're in the middle, they don't know what to do.
It's basically, is their question would be, what do we do? Do we do mask or not mask?
You know, we should have a rule about that. Policies like that, who do they follow? I think since
Right.
I would
they have
have,
to
I
follow.
think it has to go with the town.
Mhm.
If the towns are having, because it is a Hamilton or a Wenham mandate. So I guess if the building is physically in Hamilton, they have to go along with Hamilton.
Yeah.
I am seeing, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Tom.
I was just bringing it up because of all the municipal buildings that our community has or involved with. That's the one that has the most traffic,
Definitely.
public traffic.
Well, let's do
Yeah.
this. How about if we just drop the mask mandate effective 28 February? So that's one date for the schools and us and so forth. And that will give us the few days that we know we need to reach out to all the businesses and notify them anyhow.
Right.
In the
And
meantime,
also,
we can,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Gary.
just say in the meantime, that gives us a few days if there are particular concerns from the staff as well. And we can
Right.
address those on the 22nd if need be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Diane.
No, I'm reading the chat at the same time, and I just
Yeah,
want
me
to,
too.
yeah, just want to state that the reason I'm hesitant as far as the municipal buildings, or in our case, the Council on Aging or the town hall, is again, if someone goes out and they need to be out for 5 to whatever days, for whatever reason, that office is totally shorthanded. So, and we don't have anyone to cover. So I just been concerned about our municipal buildings, and I can't just drop it without speaking to them.
You know, Diane, I really do agree with you on that. You know, again, we're watching these numbers go down and down. And yet we heard our own Board of Health, a nurse that's on our Board of Health, say she's seeing in the hospital that she works lots and lots of patients from the area. And we can see from our numbers, we have numbers through the 10th of February, that in Wenham, the numbers are still quite high. And we've had more people needing to be out for medical reasons due to COVID in town hall and town buildings in the last 4 weeks than I ever remember. So I think we're going to have to think carefully about municipal buildings, but I do think we need a little more research, on the library. And we're basically, I think, saying that we're going to leave the mandate in place until the 28th. And lots of comments, and I will honestly tell you, if there are questions here that need to be answered, I would be happy to answer them. But these are both basically a subset of our community. Some people want them on, some people don't want masks. Some people say, why one building? One people say, what about Hamilton? So we do appreciate all the comments, but in reading through the comments here, I don't see a consensus. So I'm not sure. So we'll just, have to look at these comments and take them into our decision making. But sounds like right now there's a little bit more information that we need, and we will just move on and bring this back to our meeting next week.
But we can say that our intention is to drop the masks for the majority of the community as of that date, and we're just thinking about our municipal staff. That's our that's what sounds like our intention, right?
You just said it.
Yes.
All right.
Right? Yeah, that is our intention. Okay, so masks, always a fun topic. So moving on to the Board of Health meeting, and again, I appreciate the comments that everyone has made. It's a microcosm of the world and of our communities, and we understand that there are pros and cons. But we have, so we're not taking a motion on this new business tonight, but if you could go to the next slide, which has to do with the ATM venue. Another one that, so you might remember a month or two ago, the Board of Health was asked, to opine on what they thought our venue should be for the ATM. We were pretty much in the height of Omicron at that point, and they recommended that we have an outdoor annual town meeting. And the week after they recommended that, we voted to we agreed and voted to have our meeting outdoors. The Board of Health has revisited that. Time has gone on, and as of last week, they voted unanimously to recommend that the ATM could be held indoors since trends are decreasing, but to remain, as we do our planning, to maintain as much COVID mitigation strategies as possible. I would take that to mean masks and distancing, in particular for an inside annual town meeting. Because of this request, and actually before this meeting, some folks looked at Bucher School. That is where we normally have our town meeting, as far as measurements go. And based on, and I have to call this preliminary information because I have a lot of questions about it, but it does appear that we could house our general sized annual town meeting, distanced probably 3 feet apart, in the Bucher School, with possible in the gym, with a possible overflow in the what is that called, multi-purpose room. So thoughts on town meeting, indoor, outdoor? Gary, do you want to start?
Do we have
Do you any
that
thoughts?
next slide with the numbers available?
We should. There's.
It was in the packet. Do you want me to go?
Oh, okay. Well,
Not critical. Just can we throw out what the numbers
it's
were?
basic. Well, there were 2 sets of numbers, and
Right.
that's why it's a little confusing to me. So I think if you just looked at square footage, like a square room with no aisles or no front tables in front or anything like that, I think a calculator would say, this says using an online calculator for social distancing, 3 feet apart in the gym, we could accommodate 488 voters, but we expect more like 200 voters. I question that 488 number. Not that I think it's wrong. I think the calculator was right. I just don't think it takes into account the fact that we have, tables in the front and access and all those things. But the second part of this is an email from Mike Hardy. He said he met was at Bucher yesterday, and he believes that the conclusion they made was the town meeting can be held in the Bucher School with the estimated 150 to 200 people socially distanced, with overflow in the cafeteria, adequate aisles, and accessible means of egress. So it appears as if, with a few minor, understand questions, that we could fit, unless we had a huge turnout, we could probably fit distanced with masks in Bucher School. And I did double check on this, and it is likely to be available to us on the first date. So it's really our decision to decide whether we want to go with a tent or we're willing to try having it indoors. So I'm interested in what people are thinking about that.
Well, it sounds like we can accommodate what we would expect attendance-wise in Bucher School with the spacing of the seats. Also, we haven't tossed out the fact that, unlike the 2 previous under the tent town meetings, we got a cost involved here too that we ought to highlight. That the federal funds picked up the last 2, but we're talking about probably $18,000 to $20,000 if we stay outside. That
well,
correct?
I think that we have federal funds for that as well.
Right.
So the tent would be, it's not free. But we have federal funds. The
All right.
ARPA money is available for the tent. But that doesn't mean that we need to spend them on that. We could spend them on something else if we think
Right.
we'd rather be indoors.
I would rather go inside. I just think it's an easier way to have a meeting. I like saving the money. I don't really want to use the ARPA funds for something like that, but I'm flexible on that.
Well, the Board of Health was more comfortable on this, given that, well, we got 5 or 6 weeks away for this and the expected decrease in the numbers. So I would say let's hold it in Bucher School.
And the
Okay.
increased airflow, windows can be open
Mhm.
and all that stuff. So I
Yep.
think we should go with
Okay.
that.
Okay, so I would just, I think we have, so what we'll have to do in that case is, that's kind of option one on this slide.
Mhm.
And I would just recommend adding to this motion, on the second part of the annual town meeting being at the Bucher School, that, with all mitigation, what are they called? Measurements,
Strategies.
mitigation strategies recommended by the Board of Health. And of course, assuming that we get the final measurements and that everybody can fit. It seems like we can.
So we
So-
want this as 2 motions then under option
I
1?
think we have to do 2 motions
All right.
because we did vote, and I don't have the date there. I'm sorry, but it's the original
All right.
motion.
Move that the Wenham Select Board rescind its original motion to hold its annual town meeting at 1 p.m. April 2nd, 2022 outdoors.
Second,
A second. Okay. Is there further discussion about that? Good. Okay, we'll take a vote. Diane,
yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Catherine, yes. So we've rescinded our outdoor
Hmm.
meeting.
Okay, move that the Wenham Select Board hold its annual town meeting at 1 p.m. April 2nd, 2022 at the Bucher School to utilize all,
All appropriate mitigation.
all recommended by the Board of Health PPE and other social distancing requirements.
Second,
Okay. I think it's implicit, and I'm hoping that we don't have to put it in our motion, but I think it's implicit that we're accepting the recommendation of the Board of Health, because that is what they're recommending. So a second, did I hear a second on the second?
Yes.
On B? Okay, so we're ready to vote. Gary,
Yes.
Diane,
yes.
Catherine, yes. So we're back at Bucher School. I will ask Tom, actually pretty much already finalized. They want some paperwork for us, allow us to get in there. I think I will be happy. I will be happier once we have it actually drawn out how it would work. But we'll get it together and make it work. Okay. After that, this next one is pretty easy. We need a backup date. There's lots of reasons why something could go wrong on April 2nd. It won't be, well, could be a snowstorm if people can't get out. So I believe it was Tom has reached out to our moderator and suggested this date, which is literally the next week. And at the same time and in the same place, so that we would have a backup ATM date on April 9th at 1 o'clock. Does that sound like that will work for folks?
I think so. I see Roger online there. If he can just confirm that April 9th is good for him.
Hi, Roger.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, April 9th is good.
All right.
Okay, great, thanks.
No problem.
Okay,
Could I also ask Roger if he's okay with an indoor ATM, even though we just voted on it? I didn't realize you were there.
No problem, Diane. I will do whatever the board decides is necessary, but I have no personal objection. So it's fine.
Thank you.
good to know, thank you. Okay,
Yes. Yeah.
Motion?
any other, yeah,
All right. Move that the Wenham Select Board designate April 9th, 2022 at 1 p.m. at the Bucher School as the backup date and location for the annual town meeting.
And we've checked the school, or we haven't checked the school yet?
yes, they've told me that, I haven't checked it on the 9th, but the school is available on the 2nd at that
Second.
time.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's keep our fingers crossed. I say second. Sorry.
okay. Okay, that's the date. And okay, if there's no further discussion, we'll vote to designate a backup date of April 9th. Gary,
Yes,
Diane,
Yes,
Catherine, yes. Okay, so we have one more ATM issue, which we have to actually decide if we want to even discuss. I'll just make note that the governor has just signed legislation, was actually a supplemental budget bill that had a few municipal issues in it. But the two things that it did speak to, this is just for information, it is allowing remote option for public bodies. So it extends through July 15th, the previous authorization for remote public meetings, which was enacted, of course, in 2020, and it's set to expire on April 1st. So the state is allowing us to do remote meetings, this kind of meeting, through July 15th. So that's just information. It also, this legislation also allows, as we have had the option under the public health crisis, to allow the select board in consultation with the town moderator, we're not going to vote on this tonight, to reduce our quorum. Our quorum is presently 120 folks, and we can reduce it to actually some ridiculous, I'm sorry to editorialize, but some ridiculously low number like 12. So I'm just trying to gauge tonight whether there's interest in discussing changing our quorum. If so, I will put it on another agenda. We'll discuss it with Roger. But if we have not changed our quorum in the past few meetings, and even under 10th in October, we haven't had a problem. So I just wanted to gauge interest in having this discussion since it's a brand new legislation.
I think stick with the quorum. We did all right in the last two meetings during the pandemic, and I think we should encourage people to come out, not lower the quorum.
I agree.
Diane. Okay, so that was a quick discussion. So unless someone, I guess really, Roger, unless you have a big problem with us not changing the quorum, or if you do have a question or an issue, let me know, please, and we can put it back on an agenda. But from the board's point of view, I think we're going to stick with 120 for this meeting, especially now that it's, well, hopefully we'll be okay with that. Okay.
Roger's there.
Thank you, Roger. I'll be in touch. But if
Good,
you think
Catherine.
we should change the quorum, let us know.
I'll give it some thought, but again, if the board is content to keep the quorum as it is established, then obviously I'll abide by that without it.
Okay, thank you.
No
Thank
problem.
you. Okay, the last, how are we doing time-wise? Oh, I think we're doing okay. So after I looked at this memo, I completely appreciated why Gary wanted us to have this discussion, and hopefully we'll get through it tonight. And this has to do with the article that we recently decided to put on the warrant, with the increasing the process actually to increase the size of the select board from 3 to 5. So we said that we put it on a warrant, and the recommendation, along with several other things from KP Law, was, okay, there are some things you should be considering before you even write the warrant. And those are what I've tried to hopefully summarize and get us through for tonight. So in your packets there, the actual memo is there. It's dated October 20th. If you go to the next slide, please, Michelle. The second page of the memo is called contemplates the policy decisions. And so that's what we're focusing on tonight. So I tried to take each one of them and put them in a form that we can take action if we choose to. So the first one speaks to how will the change be implemented over time or all at once? Will the full committee be elected again, or will 2 new members be added? My interpretation of that, and I'm interested in others, is that there's a contemplation that we could just say, if this is voted to go through and it passes through the legislature, that when we get to our election, we just say, okay, we have no select board members. We're starting from scratch. 3 new people is one option. Or the other or 5 new people. The other option is that we keep the 3 and elect 2 new ones. That seemed pretty straightforward to me, but I know what my opinion is. What do folks think? Should this pass a town meeting? Would we want the board to be completely reconstituted or just two members added?
I can say I had never thought of it that way. I think, and of course it's going to affect me, but that take me out of it. I would imagine that you would try to just increase it by 2 and not start fresh with 5. That would be that seemed most reasonable to me.
Gary, thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
just numbers wise, I think it become very complicated trying to reelect all 5, determining who's running for, the 1, 2, or 3 year slots. And so I think the simpler way would be to knowing that 1 of the 3 would be being reelected anyway, to add the 2 new members on the staggered terms that we'll get to next.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm. It doesn't affect me, but I'm in more of an equity situation. If I were on the board and I'd been duly elected to the board, and on a particular date for no reason, I was just no longer on the board, so they could elect 5 new people. That doesn't seem fair. So we're all, I think, in agreement that would have 2 new members added. The second bullet, and it actually is a little clearer on the next page, but it speaks to, well, how, we have to then have a third of the board elected each year, changing this each year. And in the warrant, I believe Lauren wrote this, she wrote it a little more clearly. She wrote, at the election, and there's a lot of verbiage that isn't pertinent here, 1 additional select board member shall be elected for a 3-year term, and 1 additional select board member shall be elected to a 2-year term. The terms of those members currently serving as members of the select board at the time of the acceptance of this act shall be unchanged by adoption of this act. So I think we just agreed that that's the way, that part is good. But then there's 2 options that are outlined for how the ballot would look. And I'm really just reading here. Such additional offices shall appear on the ballot together, and the candidate receiving the most votes will be elected for the 3-year, and the candidate with the next highest votes will be elected for 2 years is one of the options. So just put 2 names on and see who gets the most votes. And then the second option would be that the additional offices would appear on the ballot as follows. 1 person with a particular name would have choose to be elected for a 3-year term, and 1 for a 2-year term. So thoughts on those 2 options? Gary?
I'll go first. Well, I think we need to have these as separate ballots, because the wording here forgets that there's going to be a 3rd election already, as one of the current terms will be rolling over 2. And I think that using the staggered will put us in the required third, or actually is a 1-2-2 sequence of elections. Secondly, I think we really need to have these as separate ballots for each position, because I would not want someone to come in to the select board with the reputation of being, oh, well, you're the 2nd place person. So I think, I mean, if you're going to be on the select board, you ought to win the election, and whether it's contested or not. But I should think we need, there'll be 3 ballots, 1 the turnover of the current board member, 1 a 3-year term, and 1 the 2-year term. And whoever wants to go for it goes for that particular seat and needs to win that seat to be on the board.
So
go ahead,
I want to
Diane.
just clarify, I think you mean by races, not ballots. So, but there would only be
Yes,
2
yes.
races, because there would be 2 seats for a 3-year term and 1 seat for a 2-year term. And I agree that we should do it that way rather than on the number of votes. And the other reason I think that is because we don't choose our chair based on the number of votes, which some communities do. So it doesn't seem like we should be counting who got more votes than the other if two people got elected. So I do like option 1 also.
I think that's option 2. So a ballot question on the
Sorry,
ballot.
yes, option 2, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure, I don't think this changes, or we have to decide this tonight, but I'm
Right.
not sure, are there three names on this ballot, 3 separate names, the person who's the, say, the
Well, I
position
think-
that's the end of the term, and that so 2 3-year terms and a 2-year term?
Yeah, so,
Yes.
you're going, seat 1 and 2 are already filled. We'll be filling seat 3 on its regular turnover, and seat 4 and 5 is new ones.
Yeah,
And seat
okay.
5 would be the 2-year term, but you'd have
Yeah.
to run for one of those seats and win.
Yeah. And I think we have precedent in Wenham for that. We have had situations before where could choose, I think maybe on the school committee and others, where you actually took out papers, so to speak, for the 2-year term or the 3-year term. So
Correct. To fulfill
so-
unexpired terms and such like that.
Right.
There's a question in the chat, and I just wanted to mention that the reason we're talking about adding 2 North selectmen is because there's a warrant article recommended by a town government study committee to increase our board from 3 members to 5 members. And if that's approved, we're just talking about how we would fill those 2 new seats. I hope that helps.
Right. And what we skipped over tonight, but we had already decided, was that we would ask, I got a little confused too with the election. So there is going to be a town meeting vote to just approve whether we're going to go to 3 to 5. There's going to be a ballot vote to affirm that approval of 3 to 5. And it has to go through the legislature. And then when we're all set and we're ready to vote people in, we'll follow this process, I think.
Tom's got his hand up.
Yeah, Tom, sorry.
No
Being
problem.
so small. I have to,
Just for full clarification to the people who are out there, our residents. The town meeting vote is to vote to authorize our legislator to file legislation to approve the 3 to 5 vote. And then the follow-up is the election to accept what, if the legislature approves it, to accept the home rule petition legislation, and also to make a determination of if the ballot question is, if the townwide vote is to approve 3 to 5, then you also have on the ballot for that. It's very similar to a recall election, where you vote for the recall or not, and then the candidates run for that vacant seat simultaneously for that. And what your eventual goal is to have 2, 2, and 1 for the terms. You'll have 1 year, you'll have 2 candidates for the 2 positions. Another year, 2 candidates for the other 2 positions. And the 3rd year will be just a 1 seat. So that's why you're doing the alternate, the variations on the terms going forward.
so I'm thinking from a process wise thing, and we're probably not going to have time to do this tonight. But I'm thinking that it might be wise. I'm keeping track. I know Tom's keeping track. Others are. Catherine is keeping track of what where we're leaning tonight. Maybe very quickly at our next meeting, we'll just summarize all of the options that we've chosen and just have one motion to accept all of those recommendations. Does that work for folks? Because there's actually a few more.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's more points to cover. So
Yeah.
I think
yeah,
Tom is keeping notes, because obviously
Yeah.
the warrant has to be written
right. Right.
again.
And I think we have a couple of options for the warrant that have been written, but again, a couple of versions, but they have options in them. So the next item if we can go to the next page. Well, no, before that, it starts, it says, will the voters of the entire, yeah, that one. So this is what we were talking about also. And we've already answered this question, but from a policy point of view, will the voters of the entire town be asked to decide at an election whether to increase the number of members? And I think we said this last time, that yes, we did wish there not to be an annual town meeting vote as well as a ballot election on just the question of whether to increase the number of members. And then it speaks to following enactment, meaning enactment by the legislature, I guess, the additional offices will appear on the ballot. And then again, there are a couple of options. So they, so the additional offices will appear on the ballot. So this speaks to when are they going to first, if the town meeting says yes, when are we going to have the ballot vote? I think that's what this is speaking to. And there are, I guess, a couple of options for that as well, which are on the next page. When will we have this vote? It does speak to the fact that it should be 64 days after the town meeting. But the options, according to KP, are acceptance, meaning a ballot question, a voter acceptance could be presented at one election, and the new positions would be elected in the next election. So I would take that to mean that at this town meeting, which will be in April of 2022, in the event the town meeting votes to move forward with a plan to go to the legislature with moving to 5 select board members, that at the next town meeting, which is April of 2023, the next election, 2023, the acceptance would be voted, and then the new position in option 1 would not be elected. We wouldn't actually put this into practice until the following year, April of 2024's election. Does that make sense? I'm happy for someone to restate that in a way. So that first option is going to take a long time. That's my take on that. We'll go through all of them. The time frame could be shortened if the voter acceptance could occur at an election prior to the annual town election. But the only way I see that happening, and please, correct me if you think I'm wrong, is I think that the only way this could shorten that is if we had an election about this before our town meeting this year.
But that also assumes that the legislature is going to stick out to our schedule. So I don't see, number 2 is going to be viable because
April. No, they're talking have an election before April to the election in 2023. So you'd have an election sometime prior from January, February, March in 2023 before our regular election in 2023.
Right.
But that would have to be after the legislature actually approves.
Right, but they'll have,
that would probably
but it's
be
only,
after.
we're in 2022 in April. The legislature will certainly have that done before, in plenty of time.
Well, when did we get the recall approved?
Well,
right?
it was not planned. It was
COVID.
8 months later.
COVID.
Yeah.
It was also COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was also COVID.
Really?
I think also it would be a special election just for this issue,
Bingo.
which is not, I don't know, that doesn't excite me.
No,
And I don't think it would be, it would cost money. And I bet Trudy wouldn't vote for this particular option. But the third option is also available. And that is that we put the question to the voters, should we have 3, should we go to 5 select board members on the same ballot with the select board members, with the people who would want to take those seats. And if the question on the ballot, do you want to have 5, fails, this is like the recall. If the question fails, then those names are just ignored. If the question passes, then the people who got the most votes, or on that same ballot, would be the next, the 2 selectmen that would select board members. So that's a way to do it a year earlier, and that's what's contemplated in option 3, which allows, I think, to have the ballot question and the elections of people in not this election, but next year's election.
So this one I'll jump in on.
Okay.
I know Gary wanted to talk, but I jumped. I don't really like
Okay.
option 3 for, because it seems like it would put a lot of people out, because there'll be so many candidates. There'll be a campaign. It'll be a lot of work. And then if the question does fail, it just seems very disheartening. I do have a question also. Aren't we supposed to have the ballot vote before we bring it to the legislature? Don't they want to see that before they pass it?
Well, the KP Law memo stated that it was usually the legislature would request the vote after the
Okay.
the bill is
So then
passed.
if that's the case, and what happens if it doesn't pass the vote? We
Then,
approved it at town meeting, the legislature approves it based on a vote, and then the vote fails.
just like any other measure that ends it.
Okay. All right.
I'm just looking through the memo again, because it says it's possible where there's a major change. It's possible the general court may prefer for the special act to include a voter acceptance provision rather than just the voters at town meeting. And so that confirms what we said. But it says, however, be further aware, however, that requiring voter acceptance before the act becomes applicable to the town can slow down the process.
Right.
Typically, acceptance would be presented at one election and the new positions would be elected at the next election.
The
And
other
that's when
as-
she says,
The other aspect that we haven't talked about yet too is what change this is going to necessitate in the town administrator, town manager setup. So I think we may need some time after the town meeting vote, the legislature vote, and the acceptance vote to get our division of responsibilities between a new 5-member board and a new administrator management setup as occurred in Hamilton. So I think, I'm kind of drifting towards number 1 option.
okay, well, separate from the option, there's, my experience might not apply. But in my experience, no matter what we decide to do here relative to the election, there is no link in my mind between the number of select board members and the roles and responsibilities of the town administrator. The job description that we have for a town administrator could be in place for 3 people, with a 3-member board, or a 5-member board. The reasoning, and this is where I think there's a flaw in the reasoning, at least that I've read, is some of the reasoning is, well, if you have a town manager, then there's sort of less day-to-day stuff for the select board to do. It assumed that a select board of either 3 or 5 members has anything to do with the day-to-day operations of town hall. And I question that we don't. So I'm not sure if there's a connection there, but you guys can figure out if you think there's one and talk about it, but it doesn't. I keep hearing that as like an undertone of, well, if we go to 5, we should have a town manager. I just don't think that actually makes sense. And we can get to that. That's a topic for another meeting, but it's sounding like we're leaning towards option 1. Did I get that right?
Yes. Yes, from me.
Yes.
Gary? Okay. So just maybe we have 1 minute. Maybe we can do one last quick thing and then we'll actually be done with this.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
easy.
So this is an easy one and I'll try to make it real quick. So for many years prior to 2001, apparently, select board members were eligible to receive benefits from the town, health benefits. Sometime, as we found in our history, in our archives, thanks to actually Harry Davis and Trudy, sometime in 2001, the select board at the time, in their wisdom, put together a change to the personnel, to a personnel bylaw, which essentially, and we have the memo in here, but that change to the bylaw basically said volunteers and paid or unpaid elected or appointed officials shall not be eligible for insurance or other benefits. So the reason why no one has taken benefits since 2001 is that we've not been eligible, even though it was a very much buried change that happened, that was voted on by the select board in December, January of 2001. So we thought perhaps, talking to Tom, we thought perhaps it was smart tonight to reaffirm and to clarify that policy that is already on our books if we could find them easily, but that, so that it would be clear for people who are voting at the annual town meeting, if we should adopt this motion, that no select board member, whether we have 3 or 5, is eligible for any benefits from the town. So that's the background. And
Any elected officials, not just select board,
well, oh yes,
but I agree.
elected official. Well, I think if Gary, if you can read the motion, it's a little clearer than what I'm saying.
Yes, because I think the 2001 was for elected officials that were being paid, which narrowed it down at the time to just the select
Right.
board. Also in the
Right.
draft motion, I'm wondering in that third line there, under the town of Wenham's group plan, unless they work a minimum, should we change that to unless they are employed for a minimum of
Yes,
20 hours? Because I
Yes.
think, it's an official duty, not just the
Right.
fact that you're sitting in town hall, right?
right. Yeah, that'd
right.
be great.
All right, move that the Wenham Select Board reaffirm and clarify the 2001 adopted policy stating that elected officials are not eligible to receive health insurance benefits under the town of Wenham's group plan unless they are employed for a minimum of 20 hours per week on a regular basis.
Second,
Okay, we're ready for a vote? Yes.
Yes.
Diane,
yes,
Gary,
Yes,
Catherine, yes. So we have affirmed that. So there's no confusion. And we did it in exactly, well, or a little over. So we should probably take our motion to adjourn so that we can go to our
Move
next.
to adjourn.
second,
Okay. All in favor, Diane,
Yes,
Gary,
yes.
Catherine, it's unanimous to adjourn at 6:33 from the select board meeting. The select board
And
will say goodbye and
we need to
I think we
re-log
have-
in on the
yeah, and we have a new
FinCom
login.
thing, right?
So-
All right.
All right, thank you,
thank you.
everyone. Thanks
All right.
for everything.